Hello, and welcome to another educational series in Providence's We Act series as we act to become carbon negative by 2030. Today, we're going to discuss something that all of us are very familiar with, and that is our information systems, including hardware, computers, etc., and also how that's all managed. And we're going to talk about that in relationship to environmental stewardship with technology leaders from across Providence. So I'm really thrilled today. I'm Beth Schenk. I'm the Executive Director of Environmental Stewardship for Providence. And with me today are Yvette DeRubens, Vice President of IS Strategy and Information Services, Travis Doyle, Service Engineer of Cloud Engineering and Operations, and Jocelyn Jaswick, Senior Service Line Manager in Information Services. So I'm thrilled to have everybody here. Welcome. And just a little bit of background first. So today's topic is fascinating because of the impact on the environment of electronics. Our data centers and other technology hardware is significant. We all know how much we use, how much is in front of you right now. If you're watching this, you're watching it on some sort of electronic device and platform. After all, electronic devices have advanced significantly and they're critical to our way of life and our economy. In fact, in Providence, we often think about what are the elements of environmental stewardship that really touch everyone. And I think of it as waste because we all handle waste every day. I think of it as our commuting, how we get to work, even if it's remote, so we're telecommuting. And a third area that touches everybody every day these days is our electronics. So with this, we also have the increasing challenge and responsibility of protecting both human health and the environment from potentially harmful effects associated with these electronics. And many people don't realize that they contain toxic substances. So if at the end of life they're improperly disposed of and end up in landfills, then toxic chemicals can be released. And that affects the Earth's soil, air, and water. And ultimately, it can impact human health negatively. When we think about it, it's so common to get the latest device and periodically upgrade our equipment. But is it as easy to recycle or dispose of it properly? And where does all this e-waste go? There are other aspects to this too. For example, thinking about printer usage, the average American uses 7 trees worth, or an average of 700 pounds of paper, wood, and other products every year, just in our printing. So during our discussion today, we will explore these thought-provoking topics and what we can all do to make meaningful decisions that will reduce the environmental harm from our electronics, both in our home lives and also with this team of experts, what we are doing at Providence. So I'm so pleased to be with each of you today and learn more from you. It's exciting stuff. So let me start with Yvette. Yvette, please tell us about the scale of information services across the organization, across Providence, and your commitment to environmental stewardship. I'm also curious how you drive the organization to focus on this when there are so many competing priorities.
Yeah. Hi, Beth, and hi, everybody, and thank you for inviting us. This is very exciting. It's near and dear to our hearts, and so it's a great opportunity. So Providence, to give a little bit of context, so Providence is a very large organization. We're one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States. We have 51 hospitals, over 1,000 clinics, and at information services, that means we have a big job. We have over 120,000 caregivers across 7 states. And we're responsible for the infrastructure, the systems, the applications, the securing it, deploying it, securing it, maintaining it, upgrading it, all of the above for how we run every day, and then how we transform and modernize for the future. And so it's a big undertake, a big responsibility, and obviously supporting our pledge to be carbon negative by 2030 is one of our key priorities. And it is very exciting because it goes hand in hand, right? Modernizing our technology, simplifying our ecosystem. There's a good virtuous cycle on how that helps make our carbon footprint lower and better. And in terms of, so we have a strategy that has been guiding our work for the last couple of years, and it's kind of how we frame everything we do, which is to simplify, modernize, innovate, and that ties really well with our ability to reduce our carbon. And there's some specific examples that we're going to talk about later that Jocelyn and Travis can give some more detail. But yeah, so that, and how we drive action across the board. Well, again, we're a large organization. There's a lot of moving parts. So I have the the pleasure to be kind of the connector, connecting the dots together, but really is the work of multiple teams, such as the ones represented by Jocelyn and Travis here, who are doing the day-to-day job that connects to this initiative. So my role here is really to make sure that we're putting it all together, that we're maximizing the impact, and that we find the opportunities to do more. And so it's good work.
Thank you, Yvette. It's really interesting, and I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll ask Jocelyn next, and then Travis, and then we'll come back and follow up a little bit, because I've been so impressed with the way that Providence has really grabbed hold of this in our IS division, and I think it can demonstrate to other large corporations and organizations, as well as all of us in our personal lives, how we can do this with forethought and planning, because like you said, there's a strategy to this. So Jocelyn, let me ask you some questions. Regarding particularly the large amount of stuff, the resource intensive equipment, how do we know? So phones, computers, printers, keyboards, etc. How do we know that we're buying and disposing of it responsibly across the life cycle of these devices? As I mentioned before, they can be toxic if they get into landfills or into waterways. And we have such a volume of them, not just in Providence, but in humanity, that it's an issue, this e-waste. So how do we handle that?
Thank you, Beth. Hi, everybody. I am really excited to share how hard our teams worked to rise to this challenge. So you did talk about the life cycle of our hardware, and that's exactly where the asset management team looked to see what changes we could make. So the first area that we looked at was, what can we do to make an impact with hardware that's coming into Providence? Well, we established a hardware standard, and this requires that all newly purchased electronic products be certified by the global EPEAT registry. And they have to meet a pretty high level of standard on that scale as well. So EPEAT is an acronym. It stands for Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool. And as I mentioned, it's a global standard. It rates all electronic products on how environmentally preferable they are. So preferable means this is in regards to power consumption, energy efficiency, materials used, raw materials used, and how sustainable those materials are. So we use this registry. We also require that any of our current vendors and any new vendors that we do business with have their products registered with this tool. So this registry really helps us use our purchasing power to guarantee that we're buying environmentally preferable and sustainable products. And since this is the beginning, this kind of affects our whole life cycle. And then the second part of the life cycle that we looked at was, how can we continue to be good stewards when the hardware leaves our hand? And this is to make an impact at this stage. The asset management team partnered with SIPI Corporation. And SIPI is a green certified program. They're also a leader in refining, recycling, and reusing electronics. So we designed this easy shipping program for our caregivers. They just fill out a simple form, and they get a UPS label, and they send their equipment back to SIPI. And SIPI will evaluate everything that we send back, and then it is either recycled through their partners, or it is reused or resold. So this is something you can feel really good about sending your equipment back to. And I also want to mention that this program is self-funded, and it's available to everyone at Providence right now. We can also arrange bulk pickups as well. And the really exciting thing is that the program's been in place for a little while. We have already reclaimed 240 tons worth of hardware that is not going to go into a landfill. And so I don't really know what a ton looks like, so I translated these into sort of fun visual items. So if you think of, let's say, 70 adult Asian elephants, so we've really reclaimed a herd of elephants. You could also say this is about 300 1963 Volkswagen Beetles, and that could be Herbie the Love Bug from the movie, if you recall those. And then I also translated it into 1.5 blue whales. So hopefully as the program continues, we will get up to 2 blue whales. And then I also want to make sure that nobody has to worry about our data. Our data is always encrypted, And then also all devices are wiped upon reclamation, and our IS cybersecurity team has signed off on all of the SIPI data wipe procedures. So we're really good from that perspective as well.
Okay, Jocelyn, I have to ask you, do you have a particular affinity to 1963 VW bugs?
No, it's just what comes up in my brain as I'm translating the data, and I think I enjoyed those movies as a kid, so I thought that was maybe a good icon to use.
That's great. And 240 tons, because I believe this started in 2021, so it's about 6 months or so. That's really impressive. And I'm afraid to say I might have a ton of it in my own house.
I for sure have an electronics box in my house.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, that's great. And I love the way you frame that with how it comes into the organization, how it goes out of the organization. What are some other programs that you're working on that advance environmental stewardship?
So another program that I think is going to make a big impact on these goals is the Enterprise Print program that's managed by our Technical Program Management Group. We've sent some newsletters out, but Enterprise Print is a multi-year project, and they have the goal of making printing the best that it can possibly be at Providence. We want to reduce cost, we want to reduce the environmental impact, but we also want to make sure that our caregivers have easy access to all the tools that they need for printing. It's secure and it's as modern as possible. So through this project, the aging printers are going to be replaced with these newer multifunctional printers. They have modern features. They're going to be more easy to use, more efficient, and they're also going to feature some proactive software that monitors to identify needs or toner or maintenance needs before anyone really needs to do anything. So these enhancements are going to ensure less downtime and job disruption, but it's also going to reduce our print estate footprint by 50%. It's a really big number. Along with that, we're going to put some measures into place. So there'll be duplex printing by default, and then there will be print only upon pin entry to reduce paper waste. So I heard you mention earlier that we have the average American consuming 700 pounds of products made from trees. So this will hopefully help us do our best to reduce that at Providence. And then, as I said, with that 50% footprint reduction, all of this is going to result in lower carbon emissions, reduced power consumption, because we're going to have those newer energy efficient devices, and less printing. I like to think of it as buying a new appliance for your home. You know, we've been trained for years to go out and look for refrigerators or appliances with like that Energy Star rating. So we're really doing the same thing here at Providence, just on a much bigger scale.
That's terrific. And it also saves money, because
Absolutely.
when we're more efficient, we save money. Hey, that's so cool. Okay, so I have one more area to talk with you about, and that is about what happens at night for all of our computers. We know that there's a button that we put them to sleep. So tell us about what you know about that. What are we doing along those lines to save energy when they're not in use?
So this is another part of that life cycle at Providence. This is the middle. We want to know what can we do with equipment while it's in our care. So our service engineering team has established some power policies that are applied to our different devices, and this will help us meet those environmental goals. So currently, all of the newer cloud joined devices have sleep enabled after 15 minutes for monitors. And then we're going to enable that same policy for computers at the end of September. So the computers and monitors will go to sleep to save power after 15 minutes. And then like the last thing I wanted to mention is we have been doing an effort for Windows 10 modernization and computer lifecycle replacement. The team has actually replaced over 15,000 computers with newer devices. And that number is actually going to double by the end of the year. It's going to be 30,000 old devices that have been replaced. And the newer models that will replace them are going to reduce overall power consumption for the organization.
That is pretty cool. This really aligns with what Yvette was saying in terms of your strategy to simplify, modernize, and this is terrific. So cool to learn about. Thanks, Jocelyn. Okay, Travis, let's talk about some of these underlying infrastructures that run all these devices. So I think of this kind of as magic behind the scenes. I know that we use the word the cloud, which I hope you'll explain to us. I sometimes think of it more like a basement with like a lot of things that look like the Matrix.
That's fair. That's fair. So
yeah, tell us about what we're doing and how that impacts our environment.
I'd love to.
Thanks.
So a data center is typically a facility that contains all the compute, storage, and networking infrastructure required to run all of the apps that we here at Providence use daily across the enterprise. And the joke I used to make about the cloud when explaining to people is that the cloud is just someone else's data center. But there's a lot more to it than that. The cloud is really on-demand infrastructure that has been built out at scale by these other major companies, and they offer that on demand to customers like us, and they build it for high resiliency, high efficiency, and true economy of scale. So when we're talking about putting things in the cloud, we're talking about basically renting data center capacity that's already there. We don't have to wait for it, and it's being managed and ran really well. So Providence is massive. It can't be understated how big we are as an enterprise. We actually have several enterprise data centers ourselves, and our journey to the cloud is still very young. And if to give you some perspective, you know, as an enterprise, we have over 100,000 computers at our ministries, but running the applications that you would use on those computers, we have over 3,000 physical servers in our own data centers, and those servers, at least half of them, run over 30,000 virtual servers. And we have about 3,000, we have over 3,000 virtual servers in the cloud right now. So as you can see, we've only just begun, and there's a lot more to do. So we're operating in what's kind of considered a hybrid cloud model, where we kind of host our applications out of both the cloud and our own enterprise data centers. So if we talk about our own data centers, you know, I talked about how many servers we have. So all of our 3 major data centers combined, they put out about, they consume about 36 megawatt hours per day in energy. And to put that into context, you could run about 1,200 average households per day with that same energy. And I had to do some quick math because we like 1963 Volkswagen Bugs, but that's about the energy output of about 12,000 1963 Volkswagen Beetles as well. So we're committed here at Providence in IT to reduce that footprint that we have on-prem and modernize it to increase our energy efficiency.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So if I interpret you correctly and understand the energy use of 12,000 1963 Volkswagen Bugs, you're saying that by moving from on-prem or on-premises, I think is what that means, servers to these cloud-based servers that are in large areas, they're run very efficiently because that's what they're there for. We reduce our load, certainly, but we also reduce the amount of electricity that would be used. It's not just that we're pushing it to someone else. We actually use less because it's more efficient. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we're taking a few different approaches here to make ourselves as efficient as possible. So, you know, we have grown, and as we've grown, we've acquired a lot of different ministries, and our footprint keeps growing. And it's easy to say that Hospital A might be using an application, and Hospital B might be using a different application for now. And Dr. A may have brought in his own application to do what he needs to do. So our approach is, and those applications, they may be sitting on older, less efficient hardware that is not as efficient as the hardware that we could get today. And they might be sitting at the local ministries and not even in our enterprise data centers on physical hardware. So we have a couple approaches that we're taking here. First, we're going out there, we're identifying all these applications, all these servers, and we're going to try to consolidate them onto enterprise standards where we can. And then we're going to make sure those standard applications that we deploy across our enterprise are on the best platform for that application. And we're driving cloud first. So if your application can be hosted in the cloud, that's where we're going to put it for the reasons that you summarized, that it's the most efficient place to put it. And it's also very resilient and very secure. If you can't be in the cloud for a reason, we want to make sure you're at least virtualized and in our enterprise data centers, which are also ran very efficiently. And you know, last but not least, if you can't go to the cloud and you can't virtualize in our enterprise data centers, we want to make sure you're on the latest hardware that is supported by us, because it's the most efficient and, as a side benefit, also the most secure and resilient.
And one more question. Isn't it the case, like we're trying to drive our operations to be carbon negative. This is the case with some of the companies that own the data centers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually pretty excited about this. Our focus is definitely cloud first, but we're not slacking here on the on-premise side of things. For example, our Las Vegas enterprise data center has been 100% renewable energy since 2016. And our Eastern Washington enterprise data center, we have major cost savings associated with electricity and cooling out there, because they built their cooling to be climate-based, and then also it's all hydroelectric provided power over there using nearby dams. So we already run very efficient data centers, but we just want to push ourselves further than that. And we don't just want to move things around to other data centers. We want to reduce our footprint altogether. And I think a great example of this would be we had a data center in Southern California. Some people watching may know it as Orangewood, and we actually went through an effort most of 2019, 2020 to close that entire site down. And turns out we didn't even have to move half the stuff to other more efficient locations. We were able to just shut down and e-waste over 50% of the infrastructure there and the applications. And when we e-waste older hardware, we follow the guidelines that were so awesomely set by asset management here, Jocelyn's team, and we use SIPI, so they get all of our old server hardware after we make sure all the data is securely destroyed and erased, and they recycle it responsibly.
That is very cool. It sounds really innovative and forward thinking, and congratulations to you all for this great work.
Thank you.
Yes, if I may add, I think that in addition to what Travis describes, another good part of this very good story is that we have a very strong strategic partnership with Microsoft, our cloud partner, and they too have a 2030 carbon negative pledge. So in addition to everything that Travis described, the workloads, the data that we're moving to their data center, it's also benefiting from the Microsoft's own carbon negative efforts. So it's also part of the benefit of doing all of this.
That's great. And Yvette, let me just expand on that a moment, because you have worked in the tech sector for a while, and tell us a bit more about your perspective on the tech sector's connection to addressing the climate crisis. We know that Microsoft is a leader, so are some other companies. We also know when I'm listening to Travis and Jocelyn talk, and I just think about the accumulation and the exponential growth of our dependency on cloud services and our technology. How do you make sense of that with our also shared goals often toward carbon negative?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of, like I said at the beginning, a lot of synergy, a lot of virtuous cycles that happen between modernizing technology and becoming carbon negative or reducing the carbon footprint. The moment that you start looking into, so storing data, typically it's an expensive endeavor, and it's intensive from an energy perspective. So there's a push across the industry to make that as efficient as possible for a number of reasons: environmental, but also economical, physics. So it's important as in general that the size and the footprint of and the energy consumption of technology is as efficient as possible. And so the industry as a whole is going in that direction. And I think the industry as a whole has a very big magnifying glass looking at what is being done about it and really responding to that. And so it helps us, and like all the examples and all the information that Jocelyn and Travis shared, it helps our environmental footprint, but it also helps our bottom line. It makes the experience of our caregivers better. It allows us to do more, like have more innovative scenarios of use of technology, because it's what's new, right? So one of our biggest problems is technological debt. And when we have a large accumulation of all hardware, all software, it is bad for a number of reasons, including carbon footprint. So it's a great economic opportunity. It's a great story, I think.
And probably it reduces risk as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, security is paramount, and one of the reasons we want to push as fast as possible through simplifying and modernizing.
That's pretty cool. It's a great story. We have a question that has come in, and I think, Jocelyn, this might be for you. Is the SIPI program, the reclaiming of e-waste, available in Alaska? This may be from a Providence caregiver.
Yes, it is available in Alaska. It's actually available to all of our sites currently.
Terrific. Thank you. So Travis, I want to ask you another question. What can we do in terms of extending the life of equipment?
Well, so we extend the life of equipment by recycling it, responsibly. What I don't want people to do is take the idea of extending the life of equipment to mean that you should run your server far longer than it should be run, because that creates other challenges. So that's our goal. Is end of life hardware really should be pulled out of production and recycled responsibly with providers like SIPI, so that they can either refurbish it and sell it to those who still have a need for that level of hardware, or they can break it down in the raw materials and rebuild it into newer servers or newer components that we then eventually rebuy in a more efficient form and redeploy in our environment.
Cool. So you can't just run it into the ground.
Please don't. No. Yeah. Yes. Please don't run. Please don't run.
I know it's the 1963 VW, but okay. We have one more question that has come in. What is being done to help advance Providence toward carbon-free energy? So this would be the energy that runs our on-prem, et cetera. I can address that just briefly, that we're working hard to secure available renewable energy through green direct programs and power purchase agreements, and we have been successful in a number of sites. We have a little bit of on-site renewable energy. We're also really grateful to be in states that have aggressive renewable portfolio standards. So Washington State has committed to 100% carbon-free energy electricity by 2030, for example, and California by 2035. So that helps us in our goal to get where we need to go. We use a lot of electricity and energy in healthcare, and we do in Providence, and we do, as you've just heard, in our information services alone. And so it's really difficult, like impractical, to generate all of that on site. So we need to partner with our utilities, and we need to push through advocacy on our governments for good policy. But we have kind of a strategy mapped out, and we believe we can get to 100% renewable electricity by 2030. Okay, Jocelyn, let me ask you a question. So we've talked a bit about what Providence caregivers can do, and what do you recommend really for all of our viewers, both inside Providence and out of Providence, in terms of reducing environmental impact related to electronics and information services?
So just a few simple things. If you are in Providence, definitely take advantage of that IT hardware e-waste disposal program and send that equipment back. If you are not in Providence and you don't have that disposal program, I would definitely contact your IS team for guidance. You can also call your city, you can call your community waste hauler and inquire about how they recycle e-waste. And simple things we can all do, which is only print when necessary, print two-sided as much as you can to save paper. And when you leave for vacation or maybe for the weekend, you just turn that computer and those monitors off, and that will still make a big difference.
Great, those are terrific tips. Okay, we have very little time, but I'd like to just do a quick lightning round. Just because you guys have lived in this world for a while, you're experienced in the arena, I would like each of you to just give a couple words on a closing prediction or insight on information technology as we look to the future. Yvette, what would you say about that?
I think we're gonna get there. I think these pledges or carbon negative, we're gonna look back and we're gonna say, but of course, and we of course got there because the technology is enabling that, and our business objectives are leading to that. So I think we're on the right track, and we're gonna meet our goals for sure.
Terrific, thank you. Travis, what would you say?
I would say this is a crazy and awesome time to be in healthcare IT, and I'm excited that we have pledged to modernize our infrastructure and move our infrastructure to the cloud where possible, and to use those initiatives to also improve our environmental stewardship. And I'm excited to be part of the group that focuses on that. So thank you.
Thank you. And Jocelyn?
I would say, I think, Providence is definitely taking the lead on environmental stewardship. But for anyone outside of Providence, I would say, we have to help create the demand for these kinds of programs as well. So I would say, ask your IS group for these programs, ask your city for these programs. Like, we cannot do it if we don't do it all together.
Wise words. Thank you, Jocelyn. Well, this was really fun, and we're already out of time. And I thank each of you, Yvette, Travis, and Jocelyn, for joining us today as honored guests and as experts in information services for Providence. And thank you again individually and for the entire division for working hard to reduce environmental impacts of your focus areas and to help us as we act to become carbon negative by 2030. And thank you all for listening today.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Beth.